That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Sick of Myself, the sophomore film directed by Kristoffer Borgli, which premiered at the 2022 Cannes Film Festival in the Un Certain Regard. Sidebar, it is being released courtesy of Utopia midweek, April 12th, 2023 in New York, followed by an April 14th release in LA, and will expand throughout the nation through the month of April.
The director... You said it's their second film?
Yes, his 2017 film Drib, which apparently is about an advertising campaign for an energy drink that goes wrong. Which, based on how this film was, I would like to go back and watch that. But
I thought this movie was very good.
It's from the producers of Joachim Trier's The Worst Person in the World, which you didn't see, and I believe you would like that film too.
I guess it's a satire / black comedy?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, the basic story is it's set in Norway.
Oslo.
And there's a couple, Thomas and Signe. Mm-hmm. And they are toxic as hell. The level of attention seeking is mind-boggling. And what makes it worse is they're trying to one-up each other. And we can get into the details of how they do that. But Thomas is an artist. He makes installations out of furniture he has stolen. And Signe works as a barista in a coffee shop. So one day at the coffee shop, a customer gets mauled by a dog. And it's pretty graphic. Mm-hmm. It's like the aftermath. We don't see the dog mauling her, but we see this woman walk into the coffee shop with her like neck bleeding. And Signe sees all the attention she's getting. So she logs that in her mental Rolodex. And then one day she's at home on her laptop and she sees an article about a skin disease linked to a Russian drug called Ledexol. And immediately, Signe goes to a drug dealer she knows, who's also like a childhood friend, I believe, and has him procure her a supply of this drug. And this dummy starts taking it. Mm-hmm. And within 5 minutes of the film, she is very sick. What it does is cause like deformities on the face. Like it looks like she's covered in like ulcers and blisters.
Well, and also her skin is almost falling off.
It looks like her skin's falling off. It's
almost reptilian.
And she's had like it looks like she's had a major allergic reaction because her face is puffy, like that episode of Martin where Gina gets the avocado mask. So she goes to the hospital, and of course she's being very resistant. She's not being forthcoming about what she's done. She won't let them run standard tests, so that she's like has this mystery condition. And something that I think really elevates this film is we get sequences where it looks like it's basically her fantasy of how this will all play out. Mm-hmm. So, like, she has a friend who is a reporter.
Marte.
Mm-hmm. And she gives her reporter, like, an exclusive. And as the audience, we see that she becomes famous and beautiful, like, you know, she's on TV doing these big interviews looking beautiful with her scars.
Performing, singing,
but it's all in her head. But things don't go well. She gets mild attention, and then she decides to re-up her consumption of the medication.
Well, she gets an article published about her.
She gets an article, so her friend as a reporter does publish an article, but the problem is the day the article comes out, there's a mass shooting. And that, of course, takes precedence in the media over her little story. So that sets her off where she re-ups her consumption of the medication, gets super sick again, which does garner her more attention. And then she signs on with a modeling agency that specifically is trying to be inclusive to people with like disabilities or who don't look like your standard model, who don't fit the beauty standard. So the end of the film is Signe goes on this photo shoot, but she looks bad. Like, and the brand who shoot it is, those reps are like, we can't shoot her.
The brand is something called Regardless.
And the brand is called Regardless. But they're trying to be sort of diplomatic about it. So they're like, well, if we have time, we'll shoot you. Signe ends up locking the model they are shooting up in like the bathroom. So they have like an extended amount of time to work with Signe. But Signe gets really sick. Like she starts bleeding from her scalp and passes out. And then the end of the film is, we see that after her initial bout with this mystery illness, she gets sent to, I wasn't quite sure what it was, like an outpatient group therapy support group thing.
Her mother recommended she go.
So we see in the end that she's back in this sort of like group therapy support group thing. And she has learned, throughout the film, she's learned how to sort of manipulate her situation to get the most attention. So we see her in this group therapy session, clearly having mastered how to get everyone's sympathy, the end.
Right.
Oh.
And she confessed to her.
She confesses to her, which we can get into, and her boyfriend gets arrested, so he's not even with her anymore. Their apartment's empty because all the furniture was stolen, and that's why he was arrested. Yeah, I thought it was very effective as a satire. It was uncomfortable.
Well, because you essentially don't like either of these people. They're terrible people, and you want something terrible to happen to them. But at the same time, it is strangely a little superficial.
It is, but I think considering the subject matter, it doesn't feel out of place.
It doesn't. I think that we responded to it as residents of Los Angeles, and there are certain types that this felt very familiar.
Yeah, I think living in LA, I really connected to this mentality because we get several scenes of Tomas and Signe in, like, with their friend group, like at dinner or at a coffee shop, and them just sucking all of the air out of the room because they want to talk about what they're doing, and not only do they want to get all the attention, but they also want to make sure that everyone understands like what a big deal everything is. I mean I feel like anytime I step out of the house I hear people talking like that.
Yeah, so it was grating in a way that maybe, I don't know. But I overall quite liked it. I think Kristine Kujath Thorp, who plays the lead Signe, I think does a good job. It's amusing.
So some things we see that demonstrate the attention seeking is the opening of the film is Tomas and Signe are at a fancy restaurant and they're saying that it's her birthday and they order a like $2,300 bottle of wine. And they're telling each other, we're going to steal this wine. And then we're going to tell everyone we stole it because that'll make us look cool. And then then the one-upping thing is that they're arguing about, well, who gets to say they stole it? But anyway, they do steal it. We see them go to a party and they're like embellishing the story of how they stole it. And all their friends are like, wow, so cool. Then we see them at another dinner party where Signe is faking a nut allergy. I thought that was really good, actually.
That was really good.
Because the poor server, like the cater waiter, is freaking out.
He's waiting around the eaves, making sure. Because she takes a bite off of her boyfriend's plate, and he comes right over. He's like, there are nuts in there.
Yeah, the server watches her, and he's like, wait, you just took a bite off of his plate. There are nuts on his plate. You said you were allergic. I was very diligent. Your plate does not have nuts. Everyone knows, like, why did you do that? And so he's freaking out. Yeah.
And then Thomas scores this. So this is instigated by Thomas becoming kind of notable in the local art scene because he gets an exhibit for some of his installations at some notable place. But it's funny.
And then he gets a cover story in a magazine.
But it's funny watching them talk to their friends because he's gloating and she is just trying to undersell it like, oh, well, actually, it's not in the actual location. It's in a sidebar where it's much smaller. Yeah. And then he does the same thing to her. I don't know. They are a very toxic couple.
I thought a fun scene is when Signe goes to her drug dealer, this like sort of old friend. Immediately he's like, I'm sorry I sent you that picture. And so he's claiming that he accidentally texted her like a very graphic sexual picture of himself. Mm-hmm. And then doing that thing that people do when they do that to you and they pretend like they didn't mean to, but then they're like, but did you like it? And it's like, oh, so you did mean to send it to me. I thought that was funny. And then he's kind of pathetic, although I thought he was more attractive than Tomas. But he's like, will you please hang out with me with my mom because she's kind of concerned that I don't have any friends.
And she does.
And she does it because she wants those drugs.
But then we're not really told what Ledexol does, but she tells the dealer that it's like amped up Xanax, and he's like, "Oh, great! I'm gonna take some myself too." And gives it to my mom.
But initially, she's like, "Do not take this."
She's like, "This isn't for you.
This is not for you." But then we see in the end that he did order some, and he's also now very sick.
But you can't tell somebody that. When she's getting her first MRI, there's a fantasy sequence where a doctor comes in to say like, "Your results are. We just called the police
because you're like a liar and you're filled with drugs." But even before we get there, she goes to the doctor initially because she develops a rash. Mm-hmm. And she pretends like she doesn't know, and her boyfriend sees it, and he's like, well, go to the doctor. And that was a very frustrating scene because she's sitting in this clinic and the doctor's like, okay, well, take off your jacket so I can see your rash. And she's like, no. I'm not showing you anything. We can just talk about it. And I'm just like, oh, this lady is clearly mentally ill.
Right, but the scene with the MRI, with that doctor, that's a cameo from Anders Danielsen Lie, who's a very notable Norwegian star. He's in The Worst Person in the World, for instance. I think he might be in all of Joachim Trier's films except for Thelma. But I didn't realize about him that he is a doctor, and in between film shoots, he practices medicine.
Oh, how interesting. Well, it's that scene where, so that's the second time she goes to the doctor because she's really bad. That's when her face blows up and she's looking like she's about to die. She releases herself from the hospital. She doesn't want to stay because she doesn't want them to realize what she's doing. And then when she leaves the hospital in a wheelchair, she's upset because only a few friends visited her. And she's like, that's it? 56 text messages and a few visits? Like, clearly attention seeking.
Super mad and has a fantasy about who's going to be on the list to come to her funeral. It also creates kind of this sexual tension, like sex games between the couple because she's turned on by Thomas.
His sympathy
caring for her.
That was uncomfortable.
Yeah, so essentially she has Munchausen syndrome.
Also, because at a point they tell someone they're brother and sister. So I thought they were brother and sister when they had the sex scene, because he even says, this is uncomfortable, this doesn't feel right. So I'm like, oh my God, but then I realized that
it's her eyes without a face mask.
So the support group she's going to, initially, she's the only one with sort of like a physical ailment. The rest have emotional issues. And there's a point where...
Put it lightly, yeah.
There's a point where one of the other participants is like, basically like, shut the hell up. You know, like, you're lucky that your condition is visible. Like, people can see you and understand what's wrong. But ours are not. So we have to justify how we feel. I thought that was a really good moment.
It was good, but it's also this sense of who is the biggest victim. Because I think underlying all this is the parody of, false victimhood and how that is creates these monsters, so to speak.
Yeah. Another good scene is when Signe goes to the inclusive modeling agency because we see that the person running it, this lady, she has two assistants. One is black, who doesn't speak or do anything, and then the other one is a blind woman.
And the blind woman is the one who has to run around and do all the tasks, and she...
And I thought that was so funny.
Well, and then she's moved... And they also have glassware. And she makes... Because Signe starts coughing. She coughs up blood, a lot of blood at this meeting. But is it Erica? Is that the name of the blind's assistant?
I'm not sure.
She's also the one they make call 911 at the photo shoot to describe what's...
And they're asking her, like, well, what's going on? And she's like, I don't know. I'm told she's bleeding. So getting back to Signe's daydream. So she daydreams about getting like this major morning talk show interview where she looks glamorous and sings a song. She daydreams about becoming like a very famous model, and they live in this beautiful mansion and she's shooting major campaigns and her boyfriend has to basically beg her for her time. She dreams about, at one point, she dreams about telling her friend, the reporter, the truth. Mm-hmm. And the reporter's like, well, I'm obligated to report on it, but really, you should write a book. And so she daydreams that she writes a novel that's amazing and it's like a #1 bestseller.
Lickety split, it's called The Sick Child.
Yeah. So she, towards the end, like the final time we see her with her friends, it's clear that they are so sick of them. Like that the friends are sick of Thomas and Signe. So they sort of like abandon them.
And meanwhile, we get shots of Thomas who that article that cover story that's shot about him, he calls himself the thief, right?
Yeah, like Thomas the thief, yeah.
Yes, so he's going to these high-end furniture stores and everybody's kind of onto his game. So we kind of know that that's happening, but he literally has a physical altercation with this security officer at this store and still steals. Like,
it's really disgusting.
Yeah.
I think the final scene at the photo shoot's really funny because the little gay boy makeup artist, this little skinny thing, is like, I don't know what to do with her because her face looks bad and her hair's falling out and he's trying to put like eyeshadow on. Like,
He asked the photographer, he's like, what are you thinking for her makeup?
I thought that was really cute. And then when Signe finally like falls out and is bleeding, the makeup artist faints. I thought the little actor was really cute.
And the agent, who's also an actress, I've seen in quite a few things, starts yelling like, "You're the ones that wanted me to check her out."
Yeah, because the agent, the inclusive modeling agency person, she was very clear about, as long as you sign a release saying that we are not responsible for your medical condition, like, we're just going to exploit you, hon.
She starts bleeding from the mouth in that meeting, and she asks her, like, "Does that happen? Has that happened before?" She goes, "No."
Oh.
The song she's singing, apparently in that fantasy sequence, is by somebody named Cezinando, who was an artist that was arrested for stealing furniture.
Oh, interesting. So, yeah, I think it's very effective as a satire. It does feel superficial. We never really learn much about either of the two main characters, and really Signe is the focus. So it's just highlighting this disease she has of wanting attention. And it did make me uncomfortable, but very well done.
Yes, I agree. I liked how it looked. It was shot by
nice.
Benjamin Loeb, who also shot After Yang recently, and Mandy.
I also thought whoever did the practical makeup did a really good job.
Yes.
And in the scenes where she's all glammed up, she looks really pretty. Like, her scars almost look like decorative.
You can see why the agents would have taken that meeting.
Yes, for sure.
But then when she shows up again...
And she looks like like Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
What would you give this movie?
I think 3.5 is fair.
I would give it 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was very good. Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.